Welcome back, MTN Nets podcast. What an interesting night of day one of the NBA draft. The Nets were the first team in NBA history to make 5 first-round picks in one draft. They come away with 3 international point guards, some very confusing picks, taking guys probably before they should have went, passing on some guys where you're not sure why they passed on certain guys. There's just so much to cover with this. So they come away with 5 picks. Egor Demin, Nolan Traore, I used to say Traore, I think it's Traore, Drake Powell, Ben Saraf, and Danny Wolf are the 5 Nets picks. I don't think anybody could have predicted how this would go, but this is how it went. They passed on Kasparas Jakučionis at 19. I don't know why they did that, especially considering they took a point guard with the pick right before he went to Miami. So that was pretty confusing in itself. A lot of confusing things about this draft for Brooklyn. I would say pretty underwhelming overall. There's 2 ends of the spectrum. There's people that will say this is the worst draft in NBA history, where that's a bit extreme. And there's people that will say, we have to see how this plays out, but it's a little disappointing. And that's pretty much where I'm at. Like, I want to see how this plays out. I could see a world where this draft works for the most part, but I do leave disappointed because this is just not how I thought it would play out. And I thought the Nets were reaching on certain guys, and it's just, yeah, so a little disappointing, but a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. So the draft plays out. The first 7 picks, I don't think were that crazy. Of course, Edgecombe went to Philly. That was like where the draft started, basically. Knipple 4th. Ace Bailey went 5th to Utah. Might have been a bit of a surprise. Trey Johnson to the Wizards. Then Jeremiah Fears went to the Pelicans, which I know a lot of Nets fans, and I have some friends in my life that wanted Jeremiah Fears to be a Brooklyn Net. I had some concerns about him myself. I didn't think he was a slam dunk by any means. But the Nets are on the clock here, 8th overall. You have Malawach on the board. You have Noah Senge. You have Kasparas, guys like that. You're thinking one of those 3 guys is probably the pick here. And then I did a live reaction to this pick because I just felt like something was off. It was kind of the same feeling I had on lottery night, where I felt pretty optimistic like up until a few hours before it, and then I was like a little nervous. Like I just had a bad feeling for some reason. So similar thing here. I just felt like something was off coming into this draft. And of course the Nets take Egor Demin out of BYU. And sure, I think I'm on record saying I was fine taking him at 19. We went over Demin in one of my prospect videos that we did the last 2 podcasts. I was fine with him at 19, but when you reach and take him this high and take him at 8 overall, kind of gave me some Daniel Jones flashbacks. I know somebody was saying that in the Nets Kingdom live stream. I forget who it was, but it was like, yeah, it kind of reminds me of Daniel Jones a bit. It feels like a guy I was fine with, but not where they took him. It felt like a pretty big reach. And when they showed the Nets celebrating, like the Nets scouts, you saw Joe Tsai, Sean Marks, all these guys in the draft room, and they were like high-fiving each other. It looks like they were throwing a party, basically. And you're thinking, all right, they must have gotten their guy. It must be Malawach or somebody. And then they announced it was Egor Demin. It's like, huh? Did I hear that correctly? Like, I kind of had to double take when I first heard it. Of course, Demin has drawn a lot of comps to Josh Giddey. I understand it. He's a guy who, of course, needs to work on his jump shot, but he is 6'8" and a quarter, so he definitely has size, but shooting 27% from 3 last year, that's a big issue, but definitely has NBA range. I think his jump shot form, I'm not like a jump shot doctor or anything like that, not a jump shooting expert by any means, mechanics wise, but when you watch Egor Demin shoot the basketball, it's not that bad looking. I feel like there's something there. He's still 19 years old. A lot of these Nets picks were very young guys. I think maybe Danny Wolf's maybe a bit older. I'm trying to think who they took. Saraf's probably very young, I know. I think everybody they took was 19 except for Danny Wolf, who might be like 21, so we'll get to the ages later. For Demin, The three-point shot, I think, can get better and probably will get better. Very good passer. Some people say the best passer in this class. And if he ends up being the Russian Magic Johnson, or what some people were calling him, then sure, we're gonna look back on this and say fantastic pick. I'm not entirely sold on the fact that he'll be a point guard in the NBA, especially with the Nets taking Traore with their next pick. So I'm not sure if that's their plan with Demin, because while he can handle the ball, it's also not that pretty. Like, he is pretty slow. He kind of looks robotic. He lacks explosiveness. So I don't feel great about him being a ball handler. I feel like if he's pressured by one of these high-end NBA defenders at half court, they're going to pick his pocket a lot. So I have my concerns with Demin being a ball handler. If Demin's going to work out in the NBA, he probably has to put on muscle. I don't see him gaining too much explosiveness where he'll all of a sudden be like this guy that just gets by his defender with ease. He'll have to beat guys with being like a finesse driver and beating guys with strength and things like that, footwork. So if he can develop that, he'll probably be a solid driver and hopefully develops a jump shot. We know he can pass. He averaged 2.9 turnovers per game. Okay, not great, but being a ball handler in the pick and roll, like, he mostly needs screens to get by his guy, which is kind of a red flag. But I am a bit of a hypocrite for saying that, because Yakachonis, who I really like, kind of is the same way, but I just felt better about Yakachonis' ability to work out in the NBA. But I see a path for Egor Demin where this does work out, and maybe he ends up as being one of the better players in this class. But at the time when you see that pick and you take him over like Malawak and whoever else, Yakachonis or Senge, who went to Chicago, you're like, all right, you have to be right about this. Like, that was my reaction. I'm like, you better be right. I think I said that in my reaction video that I put on Twitter. I was like, you better be right about this. Like, he can be a pretty good defender, Demin. Like, he has that size, switchability. It's just if he becomes a better shooter and doesn't turn the ball over as much, gains some explosiveness, or even puts on muscle to kind of counteract that, sure, this probably works out, but you can see a world where he becomes like Josh Giddey, which is fine. Like, Josh Giddey has a role in the NBA, but his ceiling is also not that high because Josh Giddey is a shooter that teams don't respect. It's just how it is for him, unfortunately. So I did read this in my last video when we went over Egor Demin, but my bottom line for him was Demin has that point forward size, but without a consistent offensive game aside from passing, he's more relegated to the next Josh Giddey rather than the next Jason Tatum or Paul George, whoever else matches his body type. The upside is high. I'd feel comfortable taking him from picks 10 to 15. So yeah, I was comfortable with him in the early, probably like middle of the first round. Not necessarily 8th overall, but I get it. Maybe his workout was great. Maybe the interviews were great. Maybe we don't have access to these prospects that the Nets do, unfortunately. So I'm just a fan who watches highlights and reads stuff, and that's what we go off of. So a shocking first pick for the Nets, but I guess it could have been worse. Like, I really would have been disappointed with Derek Queen, and sure, maybe Derek Queen has a better career than Egor Demin, but I just think if I were to have both guys right in front of me, I'd probably side with Egor Demin. I think there's more upside there. So that's how I feel about it. Not an exciting pick, but one that at least has a chance to work out. I just probably would have went in a different direction. I would have taken Malawach, or I would have taken Kasparis Yakachonis, but it is what it is. I just hope it works out. The Nolan Traore pick at 19, I was happy with it. I was like, I'll put it this way. If the Nets had gone with, let's say they took Malawach at the center at 8 overall, then they followed up with Traore, I would have felt so much better about it. The fact that they took a point guard, or at least somebody in Demin that we think is a point guard, then double up on point guard again with Traore, that was a bit confusing. But in terms of just Traore as a prospect, I did like him a lot. I think he's so talented offensively. Like, he's a 3-level scorer, has a very smooth looking jumper. He's a streaky shooter for sure, but 29% from 3. The form looks good. He is super quick, like, just gets by his defender with ease. A guy that really can create his own shot in isolation and just get up a shot whenever he needs to. And as I said, 3-level, 3-point shooter, mid-range, drives to the basket, can get by his guy. Like, I think he's a very talented offensive player. In terms of being a passer, there's moments of him being good at it, but that's not really his game right now. I said this the first time I talked about him, maybe last podcast, I'm assuming this was, where if you can blow by your guy constantly, it makes your ability to be a passer that much easier. Like if you're getting past your guy and getting your feet in the paint and basically creating a 5-on-4, it like just makes your life as a passer so much easier. Like if you get 2 feet in the paint, kick out the shooters, whether it's Cam Johnson, Drake Powell, like somebody who's just there in the corner, it's going to make your life easier. So Traore will find his way to get assists that way, I'm sure. He has a good handle. He just knows how to maneuver with the ball. And I think if he ever becomes a consistent shooter, I think he'll be no doubt like he'll be worth like a top 10 pick. Like if he was a better shooter percentage wise, I don't see how he doesn't go in like the top 15 at least. I mean, he went 19, but I just don't see how he falls to 19 if the percentages were better. And of course, with a guy like Traore, he was supposed to go in the top 10 coming into this year. Some people had him top 5. So for him to like fall to 19 as a 19-year-old, like, yeah, all right, guy at 19 might struggle. Okay, it is what it is. But I think he's just super talented. And I do trust our coaching, which is kind of half the reason why I'm not crashing out this video, is because I do trust our coaches. I think they'll get the most out of Demin and Traore, and I think Drake Powell is going to be fine regardless of where he is. Who else do we get? Saraf. Like, I think they'll get the most out of these guys. Like, I trust this coaching staff. I think Traore might have to put on some weight. I think he's like 175 to 185, somewhere in that range, and I think with his defense, his defensive awareness, the closeouts, like those things have to be better, but okay, it's a point guard. For Demin, at least, I trust his defensive ability way more than Traore right now, but Traore probably won't be known for his defense in the NBA, but if he's an elite shot maker and, can score from all 3 areas of the floor and be a 3-level scorer once again, then I think we're good here. Like, I don't think his defense has to be elite. So it'd be nice, but it doesn't have to be a thing that is required for him to have a role in the NBA. So I come away a fan with the Traore pick. It was just kind of weird following up the Demin pick with that, but if you take that part out of it, just this pick alone, I do like it. At 22 overall, which of course the Nets had just acquired that pick, 2 days ago? It was a good trade in my opinion. Like, there were some mixed reactions to that trade. It wasn't a great trade, but it was a pretty solid trade by Sean Marks. Like, he literally just got the 22nd overall pick just to take on Terrence Mann, who is starting a 3-year deal worth like $15 million per year. So for a team with the most cap space in the sport to take on a contract like that, which is not that bad, like Terrence Mann a couple years ago was regarded as like a pretty solid role player. So if he can get back to that, I think the Nets will make out pretty well here. And if he does play well, then maybe they could trade him by like trade deadline in 2027, or I don't think it'd be next year, right? Yeah, probably 2026, 27. One of those next 2 trade deadlines. And I believe he's from Brooklyn, I saw. So like that's cool for him at least. So with this pick, assuming everything goes as planned, Drake Powell will be traded to the Brooklyn Nets, or he'll basically be a Brooklyn Nets. So Drake Powell's interesting. Like, I do like this pick. I do think he's one of those guys who, I know the term 3-and-D is thrown around a lot, but he seems like you're just regular 3-and-D guy. Like, the defense is legit. The on-ball defense is great. The blocks, he had the highest vertical in this class. He's a ridiculous athlete. And the 3-point shot was good. 38%, only 2.6 attempts per game, but he has size. He's 6'5" and a quarter, has a long wingspan. A 7-foot wingspan for his size is pretty impressive. I remember this one play he had against, it was American University, which I had never heard of before, but he had this chase down 2-handed block where he caught it off the backboard. Like, the guy is just a crazy athlete. He'll make some ridiculous plays. A really good looking spot up shooter. I feel like the shooting form, it's not Jalen Wilson-esque because like the form's not the same, but the way Jalen Wilson puts so much arc on his shot, Drake Powell is kind of the same way. It's not the same looking form, but just how they shoot so high, Drake Powell kind of has that as well. He is a pretty good rebounder, 3.4 rebounds per game. He did shoot 64% at the line, which is a concern, of course. Like, the guy did shoot well from 3, but 64% at the line's concerning. Didn't really have much of a mid-range game offensively. There's some, like I've seen some mid-range shots, which I guess his ability to make those can get better and more consistent. I do think sometimes he could be a bit over-aggressive, kind of like the same way that Aaron Nesmith was in the finals. Like, yeah, you're playing good defense, but you're sometimes doing too much and just get these unnecessary foul calls. Like, Drake Powell might have some of that in him, but at least he's aggressive defensively. I do like that. So the defense is going to be great in my opinion. The 3-point shooting should be fine. There might be a little adjustment to the three-point line at first in the NBA, but still, I think it'll be fine once he gets used to it. And yeah, he's still only 19 years old. Like, I think at worst, this guy is like Isaac Okoro, which I guess is okay. So I think on the high end, though, this guy could be a starter for a good team and be one of those guys who tries to match up with the team's best scorer or the opposing team's best scorer. And yeah, I think it's a good pick. So I like Drake Powell, and hopefully that one works out at 22 overall. Ben Saraf was the pick at, I guess that was 26, right? I think it was 26, 27. Yeah, 26. And when you see the Nets admin on Twitter post, "Welcome to Brooklyn, Ben," and you see the name Ben again, it's like, oh, here we go. It's a lefty, too, like a lefty, bigger point guard. I'm like, oh, here we go. Ben Simmons, PTSD. But anyway, I kind of liked Ben Saraf's game when I watched him. It's just one of those things, once again, it just seems like redundant. You took Demin, who I thought Saraf and Demin were kind of similar. Of course, Demin was the better prospect, but I don't know. I felt like they were somewhat similar, just like bigger point guards and guys that weren't super athletic, weren't super quick, and maybe had some inconsistencies in their jumpers. But overall, I mean, Saraf is more of a guy who can probably create his own shot, and he's a pretty good dribbler. Like, I'll give him that. Like, I think he's a better ball handler than Egor Demin, but Saraf, I mean, it was an interesting pick. He is 6'6", another international guy from Israel. I think on ESPN they said that he was the Israeli D'Angelo Russell, which I rolled my eyes when I saw that or heard that, because it's like there's finally news that D'Angelo Russell might be out of our lives and going to the Mavericks, and it's like, oh, here we go. Let's bring in the Israeli D'Angelo Russell. So anyway, he is a crafty offensive player. I'll give him that. I said when I watched his game, I saw like bits and pieces of like Luka's game. You saw some Harden in there. You saw some Brunson in there. Like a very crafty offensive player. I would never compare him to those three guys, but that's just kind of what he tries to emulate, I feel like. And he's a guy who does have the ability to score in isolation. But with the footwork, the body control, he's a pretty good dribbler once again. The jump shot could be better. I think he shot, 28% from three last year. It's like, okay, that could be better. He was a bit too left-hand reliant. He is a lefty. He didn't really go to his right hand too much. That was something that I'm sure NBA teams will pick apart. And for somebody his size, only 2.6 rebounds per game. I don't love that. I have some concerns about his explosiveness. Can he handle NBA physicality? Things like that. So, like, once again, I did like his game for the most part, but I do have my Ben Saraf concerns. I talked about that in my last video as well. But taking him at 26th overall, it's like, all right, I get it, but you also had guys like Rasheer Fleming sitting there. I'm not really sure why he didn't go in the first round. Maybe it's an age concern or something like that. But the Nets overall take 3 international point guards. You're like, all right, one of these guys has to work out. Whether it's Demin, whether it's Traore, whether it's Saraf, I feel like one of those guys just has to work out. I'm not saying they'll be the next Luka, but can you be a solid enough point guard to be the next Brooklyn Nets point guard for the next 5 to 10 years? Can you give me that at least? I feel like one of these 3 guys has to be that. If not, it's a failure. Sean Marks probably gets fired if this draft doesn't work out, which, yeah, that's probably a good thing in the end. But yeah, the whole Ben Saraf pick, it was redundant, confusing, but as a prospect, I didn't mind him. I know that there is maybe not a ton of upside because he's not explosive once again, and the shooting has to be better, but I can see a world where that works out. And then there was Danny Wolf, who was 6'10 and a half, officially 7 feet tall, 21 years old. So he's the one guy that was not 19 who they drafted here tonight. A guy who, he's a pretty good shooter, 33% from 3 last year on 3.1 attempts per game. 59% at the line, had a lot of double-doubles last year. He finishes well at the rim. I feel like he has high basketball IQ. He's a guy that can handle the ball. He did have too many turnovers, but he can handle the ball, which is nice. And I did say this in my last video talking about Danny Wolf. He is more of a finesse player, so does he have the physicality to hold up in the NBA? I would think so for that size, but he is just a guy that just tends to be more finesse rather than trying to overpower guys. And I think there is a scenario where, once again, he becomes the next Şengün or, maybe at worst a Kelly Olynyk, which guys like that, they hang around for a while, Kelly Olynyk. So if he ends up being that, I guess it's okay. This is the 27th overall pick. I felt like Danny Wolf was supposed to go in the late teens, early 20s for most of the draft process. So to get him at 27, it's like, all right, you might as well take that chance. Guy has the size, high IQ player. I mean, just take a shot. Why the hell not? Maybe you wanted Fleming. Maybe you wanted Hugo Gonzalez. Maybe there was someone else you wanted. Maybe the Liam McNeely fans are out there. I don't know. So me personally, I was fine with that. I was pretty happy with that pick. Now going into tomorrow night, of course, this is day 2 tomorrow. There are still some good players left. I mentioned Rasheer Fleming. Noah Penda's still there. Thiero, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I know a lot of Nets fans liked him. Tyrese Proctor, I know a lot of Nets fans like him as well. I like Proctor as well. So we'll see who they take at 36 tomorrow. But I would say just for day 1 of this draft, it was really confusing and just underwhelming. And like the amount of celebration going on in that Nets draft room when they took Demin was pretty wild to see, but they must know something that we don't as fans. I know a lot of people that cover the draft, Nets fans who cover the draft, or at least are very knowledgeable of the draft, were very confused by this pick. And there was the Bill Simmons tweet about Sean Marks, which I did put in here on my graphics. He says, as usual, somebody good in the draft falls to Miami. Yakachonis is good. Sean Marks should be arrested. Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, yeah, it was a disappointing Sean Marks night. This was a big night for him. This was a night to really start the rebuild. First NBA team in history with 5 first-round picks, and they make all those picks, and you come away with most people saying it was a pretty bad draft. So, of course, a lot has to play out. 4 of these guys are 19 years old. We probably won't even know next year if this is going to work out. It might take 2 to 3 years, maybe 4. But the good news is these guys will get their playing time, I'm sure. Like, I don't even know why Cam Johnson's still here, and Nick Claxton, I guess, he's still somewhat young, so it's like, all right, I kind of get that one, but the whole Cam Johnson thing, I don't get. It seems like D'Angelo Russell might go somewhere else, which makes the most sense, especially now with having these 3 point guards, and Ben Saraf apparently is the next D'Angelo Russell anyway. So I guess on the bright side, if the Nets are going to play these 4 19-year-olds next season, then the chances that they lose a lot of games is pretty high, and the chances that they can get a high pick in the 2026 class, which is supposed to be great once again, the Darren Peterson, the Cam Boozer draft, and someone else I'm forgetting, like that's supposed to be a loaded class, and if they can somehow get lucky for once in their franchise's history, which tends to not happen with the Nets, then that would be great. Like if you combine some of these guys with a top 3 pick next year, then all right, maybe we're cooking. Like we'll see what happens. But for 5 picks, I would say based on like value and just how much I like these guys, this is probably how I'd rank these guys. I would say my favorite was Traore or Traore. I just think he's going to be a really good scorer in the NBA, and if he develops other parts of his game, that'll be a really good pick. I think my second favorite's Drake Powell. He seems like a safe guy, like an actual 3-and-D type of player. My third favorite was probably Danny Wolf. I think that pick makes a lot of sense at 27. The ceiling's high. Yes, he's 21, but a high IQ player who will probably work his ass off and hopefully become a little bit better of a shooter. And obviously, look, he won't be Jokic, but Danny Wolf's skill set is pretty unique, the way he can handle the ball and being 6'10". So we'll see what that turns into. I would say my fourth favorite pick, I guess I'll go Demin. Obviously, his ceiling's a bit higher than Saraf, so I'll go with Demin, although taking him at 8 was a reach in my opinion. Then I'll say Saraf is last. I mean, sure, there's things I like about Saraf. Once again, I said there's parts of his game that are Harden-like and Brunson-like, and who else did I say? Luka. Like, there's stuff about Saraf's game I like offensively. Not sure what he brings defensively, but being a 6'5", 6'6" lefty point guard, if he does in fact become the next D'Angelo Russell, that's a good pick for the 26th overall pick. D'Lo was what, the second or third overall pick in his class, and he's having a solid NBA career. So if he is the next Russell, then all right, yeah, Sean Marks, that's a positive return on your investment. But hearing that, of course, as a Nets fan, it's like, ugh, I don't want that. So anyway, that'll do it for this reaction. I know some Nets fans will crash out about this draft, and I get that. We're all entitled to our own opinions. I choose to, look, I am disappointed once again. I expected a little more, but I do want to see how this plays out first. I don't want to look at these 19-year-old prospects and be like, oh, he sucks. No, I want to see how this plays out first. Let's see Jordy and the coaching staff get their hands on these guys, and let's see what they turn into. We're not going to know next year. We probably won't know the year after. As I said, it's going to take 3 or 4 years probably to find out what this class is. And for Danny Wolf, who's already 21, yeah, we might know sooner how he is. I mean, I feel like he might be older than like Dariq Whitehead right now. So that will all play out. I guess this draft could have been worse, but it's just kind of weird how 3 of these guys are international, and it could work out a bunch of different ways. So anyway, we'll see, but hope you guys enjoyed the video. Of course, leave a like, subscribe if you made it this far, and I'll talk to you guys next time.